Hello and welcome to our Spiritual Coaching Summit. I am so excited to be here with you today and this week. I love talking about spiritual coaching, and I wanted to bring you a variety of spiritual coaches that I know and that I recommend because they each bring to the table their own unique gifts. And you could hear from me all day long about spiritual coaching and spiritual coaches and what it's meant in my life. But you can also learn from these other experts. I'm really excited to have Beck Nelson here with me today. We are going to talk to you about her work in the world and about spiritual coaching and what it's meant for her in her life and with her clients. I have known Beck for quite a while now, and she has some really unique things that I want to share with you. And she and I have some things in common that I really want to share that she brings to the table. Beck has had a successful business for years as a personal transformation expert and as a therapist. She has her own healing center, her own counseling center, and now she has added these other elements of working with people through the spiritual coaching. And it's been a great way for her to create that bridge and do this coaching work with people that's different in a lot of ways from therapy. I myself am a former therapist, and so I understand the gifts that we bring naturally to the table as we come into the spiritual coaching. So welcome, Beck. It's so good to have you here with me today to talk to my community about this.
Hey, thanks for having me on today. I appreciate you having me join you.
I'm really excited to bring your perspective to this because when you and I were talking, I love it because it's my own experience where once I really started talking to you about spiritual coaching and what it is, you said, well, I've always been doing that. But we were really in that world of therapy and in certain ways within that we weren't calling it coaching and we weren't always bringing all of these elements to it. But you've actually been doing this for years. You've had a successful business helping people, and now you're just really expanding that. Beck also has a book about her work coming out this year. So a lot she's going to bring to that. Start out by telling us, what do you do for others as a spiritual coach?
Well, kind of like you said, I realized once I get into it that spiritual coaching is pretty much what I've always been doing and housing it as therapy, which mental health therapy, which it is a portion of that. But I think in my work, it's been more about helping people to understand how to get to the next level. That's a phrase that I've used a couple times, right? So, and what I mean by next level, I mean, people are kind of in a place where they know that there's something missing. They're not really happy with where they are, and they are trying to do some things that are trying to get them to that next level, and then they're getting more in their own way. So I can kind of come in and figure out why they're getting in their own way, how it's happening, and figure out what the next level looks like for them, and then coach them into getting to a place where they can reach that and achieve it.
I love that, bringing all your tools to the table because people get in their own way and they can't see it. And you talk a lot in your work about people come up with these solutions that they think are great solutions, and they actually create more problems for themselves. And that's one of the things you always talk about, is helping people reframe and look at where they tried to solve problems on their own and then they created more problems.
Yeah. So that can happen in two ways, right? Sometimes that's very literal. An example would be, hey, I'm having trouble sleeping. And then I'll say, well, what kind of things have you been doing to try to sleep better? And they'll, talk about, well, I drink warm milk before I go to bed, or I exercise before I go to bed, or I wake up and I watch TV for a while, or read a book. And it's like, okay, that's a very literal, like those things that you're doing are probably keeping you up, not helping you sleep, right? But then there's things that people do unconsciously that they don't realize is what they think is solving their problem, which would be things like, I'm not happy with where I am, so I'm going to try to change the people around me because those people are the ones that are making me unhappy. It's because my kids don't pick up their clothes or listen to me. It's because my husband doesn't help me make dinner at night. And so they start to try to get the other people around them to change. And what they realize after what I see is that it's actually making things worse for them, and it's getting in their way, and it's impacting their support networks and their relationships. So it's actually making things worse.
Yes, I love those examples. It's very true. When you get to the bottom of it, is where people try to change everyone else except themselves. So again, you help people in relationship to other people and in relationship to themselves about what will really help them. And that's something that spiritual coaching can do. And I know that when you were moving, looking at what you do in therapy and the things you were doing, in addition to that, one of the things that you do is angel readings, and that you bring that to your clients when you're doing the spiritual coaching.
So what I found with the angel reading is that the angels are really very adept at trying to figure out what it is that somebody needs to hear. And time after time, it's pretty magical, actually, when we ask the angels, what is it that this person needs to hear right now, in order to be able to move forward? And they always pinpoint exactly what it is. They get it right every time.
Yes, I've found that. So it's that going to that higher perspective and finding out what do people need to know right now. And then you're bringing that information through for them. And then you're helping coach them on what does that look like? How do I apply that in my life?
Mm-hmm. It's pretty magical. In the beginning when I first started doing it, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then as we did it, more and more experiences would happen, and I would say, they're talking about this, and obviously it's not a message for me. So I kind of was like, do you know what they're talking about? And they're like, yeah, I think I do. And it's always exactly what it was that they needed to hear, even if it's not what they wanted to hear.
Yes, I love that you bring that up because that happens all the time. And it's a big component of spiritual coaching versus even other kinds of coaching, is that you show up and you have the client, and then we bring spirit into it. We bring angels, we bring spirit guides, higher self. And by bringing in that spirit perspective, magic does happen because you're the conduit for that, but you're bringing through this divine help and intervention, and we can really see things happen in people's lives. And like you said, it's always the message that they really need in that moment.
Mm-hmm. So in that effort to not look at whatever it is that they probably have to look at to deal with whatever's going on, to like move forward, they start to realize that they're putting a lot of energy into changing other people. And first of all, that's exhausting, right? Because you're never going to change somebody else, so you're not going to get the results that you're looking for. So then you are of course going to feel defeated, like, this, what's wrong with this person? They're not doing or being what I need them to do or be. So then they get exhausted, and the more tired they get, the further they're getting away from their own intuition and their messages from spirit, or just being able to be spiritually healthy. So they kind of get further away from that. So then their intended solution therefore becomes part of the problem.
Yes, that is a great way to talk about that. Definitely. Tell me what you love most about spiritual coaching and being a spiritual coach.
So I love the fact that in spiritual coaching versus like the mental health coaching, first of all, I don't have to put a label on somebody. In the counseling piece, they had to have a diagnosable condition so it could be covered by counseling. And that's not always appropriate, right? But we do it because people have to want to get it paid by the insurance company. In the spiritual coaching, we don't have those parameters, right? We're sort of free to use tools, etc., that we can't use in other places, particularly the mental health. And I love sort of people like getting it. You can tell when they're starting to understand that me putting all this effort into changing other people is actually lowering my own vibration. And when you lower your own vibration, you're not able to be your best self. You can't hear the messages from spirit. You can't live your best life. And when people, I think probably have clients that are on right now that are at that place. And when you see them kind of make that connection, that they need to actually focus on themselves, because you can't change somebody else, number one. And then the second piece is that when you do that, other people in your world will start to change because you have changed. They will notice the change. And I mean, I went through this myself, where I was, asking other people in my world to be or something else, or be what I needed them to help me out more, or be more supportive of me, or whatever. But I had to change me. And when that happens, the other people start to notice that you're different, and they by default are going to be different.
That is so powerful. I know I had to learn that as well. And it's one of the things we bring to spiritual coaching that you bring up, that I've talked about with the other spiritual coaches and with myself. We come to this work through our own personal journey. We have powerful personal stories, and then we bring different expertise along with that. But you had to learn that. And then we turn around and we help other people with what we learned.
Mm-hmm. I it's that moment where it doesn't happen all at once either. I think there'll be one session where people kind of get it, and they're saying, okay, what do I have to do? What do I have to focus on? And that's when I start bringing out the rules, which are going to be outlined in the book that's coming out before the end of the year. And so when I start bringing out the rules, they're like, okay, I can stick to that, and they get it. But then when you go to apply it between sessions in real life, it's like, oh, this is hard. So so what they're hearing is, so it's not okay for me to tell other people that I'm mad at them, or that I need, I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, if you focus on trying to get somebody else to do what it is that you want them to do, you're not focusing on what it is you need to do. You're not raising your own vibrations. And then you're going to go back to that place where you feel stuck. So it doesn't happen all in one session. You could be doing great, and then you have a session where you're like, oh, everything's right back to where it was again. And no, it's not going to happen like that. So I love when they when it clicks and they start to do it, and we, like, nope, you can go back to it. Just, you just had a little bit of a bad week. Remember what we talked about, and how do we get back there? And when they start to do it consistently, then things will shift for them. That's the piece I love.
I love that too. And you bring up a great point. It's why we create a container and a period of time to work with them, so we can bring everything to the table for them, because people backslide into old habits and patterns and limiting beliefs like you're talking about. And then we're there to help remind them and to help them over a period of time. Change doesn't happen overnight, but once you teach them, then they can start catching themselves, and then they can get better and better. And then they'll start seeing those changes in their outer world. And that's a big part of the healing and transformation that happens inside spiritual coaching.
Yeah. So when I do the 90-day container, I usually find that it takes about 6 to 8 sessions for people to come consistently, to get that message consistently, and be reminded every week, like, it's okay to slip, and let's get you back on track. And then in that 6 to 8 week mark, they start to understand, okay, nope, I've been here before. It doesn't mean I'm sliding backwards. Let me get myself back on track. And then we go every other week and say, now that it's more time between sessions, do you still have that same kind of success?
Yeah, I love that. It really does. It builds on itself over time, and you're there the whole 90-day period, or however long they work with you. You're there as that support, that solid support and guidance, with access to you to help them in those moments as they're working through it.
Yeah, I think I love that moment when they come in and they're like, the first time that it doesn't work, or it didn't work this week, and I'm like, well, what do you mean it didn't work? And what's funny is when they say it didn't work, and I say, well, what do you mean? Because I know what they're going to say. It's the same thing every time. And they'll be like, well, I did what you said and what we talked about, and then my husband still didn't help me make dinner. They fell right into my trap, right? Because I'm like, remember last week when I said the goal is that you're different, that you're staying on track, that you stay positive, that you're minding yourself. The goal is not to get your husband to try to help you make dinner. And they were like, oh. So the measure of success is not about getting somebody else to do what you want.
Right. And you're there to remind them because those are concepts people have to learn. And you're there to remind them. But once they get them, they can apply them forever. Can
It's
you tell me what would you tell others about working with a spiritual coach, either why to have one, what can be achieved, or what to look for?
I think you have to find somebody that you click with, right? It's so what I tell people is remember when you were in school, and I'm sure you can remember back there were some teachers that you probably don't remember their name or whatever. You just didn't click with them, right? And then there are some teachers that you just loved, like they were inspiring. You wanted to get up and go to school every day. You kind of wanted to make them happy. You wanted to work with them. There was something in them that you were drawn to. And I would say the same thing with a spiritual coach. You know, you need to speak with somebody and see if you can, you're kind of drawn to them, see if you like their energy, see if you believe in the things that they're saying are things that you've already been thinking. And you're like, oh my God, it's like she's sitting in my living room talking to me right now. And so it's important to talk to somebody on the phone, get an idea of if you're connecting with them or not. Do they speak your language, you know?
Yes, very much. And I find that because out of all the coaches, I've had coaches for a long time, for many years, and I know so many coaches, and there's some I just wouldn't hire, and others I just know they have something for me. And it's finding that match of that right coach. I love what you talk about, just like teachers, because we are showing up as teachers and leaders and coaches in their life with a message. And so the people that will resonate with you will just know you have something for them and they'll be drawn to that.
Mm-hmm. And you want to work with them because you know that they don't have an agenda, right? They're not there. They're not going to use something against you later in a conversation. Like you can trust them and they have your best interest in heart.
Yes, very much. So tell us, what is the best way to connect with you?
I have a YouTube channel that I just started 2 weeks ago. Trying to put videos on there once or twice a week. It's talking about some of the things that I'm talking about now. So you can find me on my YouTube channel, which is Beck Nelson, Beck BECC Nelson LMFT, which is a licensed marriage and family therapist. So there's some videos on there. Also, if you go to becknelson.com, it will actually bring you to a sub page of my Hope Counseling page, which is the healing center that we have. And on that page, it will tell you a little bit about spiritual coaching and what it is. Also has a description of angel card readings. And on there, there's a button to connect to my YouTube channel. And there's also a button that will connect you to my email. So you can send me an email directly through there.
Oh, great. Yes.
Yeah.
And be sure to make sure you're connected with Beck and I on Facebook. And we show up there regularly. We're part of a community and we inspire and motivate. So make sure that you're connected. Beck has been getting a lot of people watching those videos and really finding value in them. So going over to YouTube as she starts teaching you pieces of these concepts, because they're just such basic things that can affect our lives. And what you were just talking about having to remind people, remember, it's not about the measure of success to get other people to do things, but don't you find that once you really teach this and people get this, their lives start getting better and the people around them change because they're different.
Yeah, it's when you turn your efforts into yourself, you find a better measure of success, right? Because you're never going to find success trying to get other people to do what you want them to do or be who you want them to be. And that's scary for some people because they're like, well, so are you telling me I can't tell somebody that they're upsetting me or I can't tell somebody what I need? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you put all of your energy in trying to do that, you're going to feel exhausted and like you're not getting anywhere because guess what? You're not. You're not going to get someplace trying to change somebody else. You have to do it from here. And then you have to evaluate your other relationships from there.
Yes.
On the some of the things that what I started was therapeutic Thursdays, and last week I put up a post about an anchoring exercise. Um, what I find is a lot of the people that I work with are like, you know what, I know about meditations and I can find those online. I need something quick that I can do right now in the moment, but when I'm sitting at my desk at work, or I don't have 15, 20 minutes to do a meditation and I don't have the patience for it. Back, I can't sit still that long. And I'm like, that's me. I needed something quick too. So this is a tool that we're going to build on over time that can work fairly quickly and people can keep returning back to, and that you use it quite often and you kind of build a rapport with it, right? So you're going to make a connection with that anchoring exercise. So that is on the YouTube channel. Also, I find that a lot of spiritual coaches, people think about them being great for women, but I also work a lot with men, that a lot of coaches don't focus on. And I think that part of what it is helpful to work with men is that notion of you have to focus on yourself. And I think a lot of men like it when I talk to their wives and tell them, stop telling him what to do, because he's not going to listen to you. And they're like, yeah, yeah, what she said. And so I work a lot with men too. And there's probably some of my clients on here watching now, I hope. And I find that that's the best part, because I work with couples too. And when they're both like getting that concept at the same time, that's just like magical.
And even in the spiritual coaching, because you bring all your gifts and expertise to the table, you are a licensed marriage and family therapist, and you've spent years and years working, like you said, with men, with women, with couples, with families, and with relationship. And so you bring all of that to the coaching experience as well. And something that I know that is also very valuable, that's unique with you and with myself, and not with all spiritual coaches, is there's a lot of talk these days about trauma, trauma versus intuition, and trauma response and trauma informed. And naturally, you have this expertise in working with trauma and working with people, and you bring that into the coaching relationship because it's part of who you are. And so people in crisis, you bring that extra level of really being able to speak to that and help them with that.
Yeah, I mean, my focus is, yes, we can talk about that trauma. Clearly, that is something that brought you to where you are today. It's a piece of how you developed, and how you got to this place, right? The learnings that you've had. But let's talk about how we can use that we can reframe that as something that you're going to use to learn to make you stronger. So let's focus on more of the solution than the problem, which is, I'm stuck in this place because of my trauma. Can we use that? Can we reframe that into a strength that you're going to use to move forward to get to where you want to be?
I love that, because you understand it's like getting unstuck and getting out of that place. So solution focused. And what do you want in your life? What do you want now? What do you want to be different? What do you want to have? And then helping people really take a look at those things and then move forward. And that's something that coaching does too. It's really about helping people move forward and create the success that they want and the transformation they want that brings them the results that they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. And especially when you've been in trauma, a lot of people are in that place where they're like stuck in that trauma. It becomes to define them, and we need to find a new definition.
Yes, that's very powerful. That can really empower people. In the same way you said in coaching, you're moving beyond giving people a diagnosis and keeping them in a place. They can really be, can't they, anything that they want to be, that they can move forward and create that. And it just gives a whole new outlook on life for them.
I hope so. I mean, my approach, I've called it the loving authority, because I'm somebody who's pretty direct, which I think is probably why I work well with men and women, because most women are like, no, they've said, I just need someone to kick my butt. Right. And I'm like, okay, well, are you sure? Because I don't know if you know exactly what that means, but I'm going to kick your butt, which means I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to hear. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And I think a lot of men like direct as well.
When you first told me that, the loving authority, and because I've known you now for a while, you really are direct. And I can say for myself, I always wanted to hire coaches that would be direct and in a safe place because you build trust and rapport. I want my coach to call me on my stuff. And I want them to help me get past that. And so when you told me about that, the loving authority, because you bring this real care. I mean, you're a healer and a helper. You've been one always in your vocation and your career, and you have that side, but you also have that really direct side because you want to help people move on and move forward. So I think the loving authority really fits. And then you bring the other piece in, that love when you're working with angel messages and things like that in that realm, that just naturally brings that level of unconditional love. So I think you really marry those well, but it's good for people to know that you're going to hold them to things and help them be their own authority and call them on their stuff, but also have that love and understanding and compassion of how they got there while not letting them stay there.
Right. So I'm not going to be the good fit for somebody who wants me to just let them know that they have every right to feel sorry for, I shouldn't say feel sorry for themselves, right? Because they do have a right to be sad. But if you want to stay there, I'm not going to be the right person for you.
Yeah. And that's always good to know. Definitely. So before we finish up, just tell me something that you would like to share with our audience, something that you can pass on to them of your wisdom.
I think I've told this story to a couple of my clients, so they're probably laughing right now. I remember a sign that I saw in my dentist's office that really stuck with me. It said, "You don't have to floss all your teeth, just the ones you want to keep." And I was like, wow, that pretty much sums up what I'm saying right here. Like, you can do whatever you want to do and fool yourself and tell yourself that it's enough. But as long as you do, just know that there's going to be certain consequences to that. And if you're willing to deal with those consequences, go right ahead. Do it, don't floss your teeth.
Yes, when I first read that, that hit me like that too. It's so profound, and it really is. We all have choice, and so we get that support and guidance. And that's a great way to put it. It kind of hits you right here of, oh, yeah. What are you choosing and what do you want to do? And then there you are saying it's your choice and there are consequences. I can help you. And that's really what a good coach does, is helps people create new consequences and new results.
Well, I think people get defiant when you tell them don't do this. Right? You can say, no, go ahead, do it. But just so you know, if you do it, this is probably what's going to happen. Can you look like, are you okay with that? Which is a whole lot different than say don't do that.
Yes, very good point. And then when they come back to you and say, oh, I did it, and here's what happened, then you're like, well, now let's work through that. And now let's go to the next thing. So it is a process, which is why spiritual coaching can happen within a time frame where you can really carry people through that process to their own growth and healing and transformation.
That's the loving authority.
The loving authority. That's it. You heard it from Beck, the loving authority. Thank you so much for being with me today and talking with me about your work in the world and about spiritual coaching. You all can use the hashtag Spiritual Coaching Summit and find all of these that are going on this week. And thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.